The bell rang? Oh, I didn't hear it. Okay. Good morning. They tell me the bell rang, I didn't hear it. Welcome to Theodore Parker Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Elliot Jarrell, and I'm glad we are beating the snow today. As we enter into worship, we bring with us all of the sorrows and joys of our week. And we know that here we are held in loving community. Here we're reminded that we are part of something larger than ourselves. Here we seek to counter oppression, to work for healing and justice in a bruised and broken world. Here we invite all of you to bring your perspectives, your beliefs and doubts, and all that is unique and wondrous about you to our service. In the spirit of love, all are welcome here. For those of you joining us in person, a few things you may want to know. Our congregation is mask optional, and if you'd like to be seated in an area where others are also wearing a mask, the section over here on my left, your right, is reserved for people wearing masks. You can also use the QR codes at either entrance to pull up the order of service on your phone, or take one of the large print copies available at either entrance. Our service is being recorded today and will be available on YouTube later. If you'd like to have a joy or a concern shared with the congregation today, you can light a silent candle of joy or concern over on the left, but we are also having in-person joys and concerns. People of all ages are welcome to move about in the sanctuary as they need to, or to make themselves comfortable in the cozy area up here in front of the first pew. There will be children's programming today for elementary school-age kids, and during the service, our child care provider, Shannon, is available to be with nursery-age children in the nursery, which is located in the parish hall. Many thanks to Deanna, who is our camera point person today, and to Ruth, who is our Zoom usher. If you're new to Theodore Parker Church or visiting today, we'd love to stay in touch. You're invited to fill out a connection card, which will give you an opportunity to sign up for our weekly updates and to help us to welcome you. A link to the connection card will be in the chat on Zoom, as well as our contact info. Those joining us here in the sanctuary are encouraged to fill in the contact card that you'll find in your pews within the welcome brochure in front of you. Finally, this morning we welcomed guest musician Xander Gunnell, who will be playing the Petite Suite by Claude Debussy, a piano suite for 4 hands, with Yukiko Takagi throughout the service. We'd like to take a moment to greet one another. For those of you on Zoom, putting your video on for the first time helps us connect. Would you please put our sanctuary screen in gallery view, Deanna, so that we can see our off-site congregation? And then, everybody, are we on? I can never tell. Okay, and so those in the sanctuary wave towards the camera so they can see us. And as we continue to greet one another, if online, you may post a hello in the chat. If you're physically here, we invite you to greet one another and say good morning, but please ask for consent before offering a hug or handshake. Please greet one another. Oh, where's the bell? Are you going to ring the bell? I don't have a bell to ring. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Heather Concannon. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the minister of this congregation. And our worship service this morning will be co-led by me and Kathy Ware, who is helping to lead us in a service on reproductive justice. And I am so grateful to all of the work that she put in for leading to lead this worship this morning and help to shape it. Our opening words are from Reverend Elizabeth Mount, The Right to Choose. To begin, to start, to create, to undertake, to grow, to promise, to increase, to generate. All these are our birthright. As we are created, so may we create. The ability and the choice to create is sacred. To withdraw that chance from any person without their permission would be a violent act, the cutting off of life itself. And yet, as precious is the right to simply not, to end, to terminate, to stop, to discontinue, to rest, to hibernate, to impede, to prevent. These too are our birthright. For without consent, our ability to create becomes not a blessing, but a burden and an imposition. Without space for a no, there can be no trustworthy yes. Today, we come to this holy place and time, ready to invoke the divine, to make space for the sacred, to co-create community once again. This, too, is a choice. You cannot, you may not be coerced into relationship with the holy or with one another. I invite you, I ask you to join us, and I respect if you will not, today or ever. More sacred than any other individual need is choice, the right to know oneself, the right to know what you are ready for, what you need, to stretch when you can, to pause when you will, to know your body, your mind, your spirit better than anyone else, and ultimately, to be trusted with the responsibility of your own living. Welcome. I invite us to rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 298 in the gray hymnal, Wake Now My Senses. We'll be singing verses 1, 3, and 4, and the words will also be up on the screen. Please rise as you're willing and able.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Please join me now in saying the words of our shared covenant, our child's lighting words, which we say each week, both in English and in Spanish. The Spanish is in honor of our sister community in Plazuelos, El Salvador. The words will be up on your screen, and I think Nola and Petra are going to help light our chalice whenever you're ready. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio es nuestra oración. Esta es nuestra gran promesa, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. Good morning. From a different mic now. My name is Rose. I serve as this congregation's religious educator. So glad to be with you all this morning. I have a story to share before I invite any kids who want to join me for Children's Chapel to head over to the parish hall together. So this morning, of course, we're talking about the sacred rights that each of us have over our own bodies. As our opening words reminded us, we have the right to know ourselves and to be trusted with the responsibility of our own living. And in practice, this means so many different things, right? I mean, it means the right we have to make big and small decisions about our reproductive health, including the right to choose abortion. And it also means all sorts of everyday things. The right that we have to choose how our body exists and moves through the world and how other people interact with us. So the story I have to share this morning is a really fun one about some of those everyday interactions that we have, in which the need for consent, our permission about how others interact with us, that need shows up, and how we remind people about our preferences, our boundaries, around our own bodies. The story is called More Than Fluff by Madeline Valentine. We're going to have it up on the screen so you all can follow along. More Than Fluff. I wonder, Deanna, do you mind turning the captions off so that I can see more clearly the words? Thank you so much. Daisy happened to be very fluffy. This is Daisy right here. Next one, we'll get there. Being fluffy was all anyone noticed about her. Aw, aren't you the cutest thing? I could just eat you up. Adorable. They squeezed her. They petted her. They kissed her. They popped up out of nowhere and tried to hug her. It ruffled Daisy's feathers. Only at home could Daisy relax. Sorry. Why do I have to be so soft, she said. I'm not just fluff. I have substance. What about a smooch? Something had to change. Daisy decided the time was right for a new look. It was spectacular. But it was also pretty icky, a bit sticky, and super stinky. By the end of the day, Daisy was right back where she started. Daisy couldn't take it anymore. I am more than fluff. Mom decided to have a talk. Daisy, honey, I know you're angry, but you cannot peck others. But everybody cuddles me when I don't want them to. Have you tried telling them how you feel nicely? Daisy hatched a plan. It's time for your afternoon cuddle. Actually, it's time for you to give me some personal space. But I wouldn't mind a wing bump instead. I don't want a hug, but thanks for offering. It's good to see you. With a little practice, Daisy got the hang of letting everyone know what she wanted. I'd prefer if we didn't, but how about a high five? How about a low five? Tail bump, pinky shake, super secret handshake. And I'm sorry I pecked you. Everyone learned to give Daisy some space when she wanted it. And she did the same for them. Aw, can I give you a hug? Nope, no hug. I don't want a hug. I understand. Daisy happened to be fluffy, and that suited her just fine. Would you like me to read you a story before bed? Yes, please. I'd also love a hug and a kiss, if you would. Oh, Daisy, I'm always happy to give you a hug and a kiss. Thanks, Mom. The end. Thank you all. Now please join me in singing our children's benediction. We'll sing the children out to Children's Chapel.
For you shall go out in joy and come back in peace, and come back in peace. Blessed be.
As we enter into a space of meditation and prayer, I invite you to find yourself here in this moment. Settle your body into the pew or wherever you are at home. Take a few nurturing breaths. And I invite us to remain seated and sing our centering hymn, How Could Anyone? It's number 1053 in your teal hymnal, and it will be up on the screen as well.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
So friends, we come into community to share our lives and our hearts with one another. And one of the ways that we do this is that we offer opportunities to share what is bringing us joy and what is bringing us sorrow, knowing that in sharing our joys are multiplied and our burdens are lightened. Many weeks we have an opportunity to share our joys and our sorrows in a written format, and about once a month our community's practice has been to share verbally, so people can come up if they would like and light a candle and share into the microphone what joy or sorrow you're carrying with you today. And if you're joining us on Zoom, you may type a joy or a sorrow into the chat box, and I will read it aloud from the microphone as well as lighting a candle for you. So I'd like to invite you forward to share.
I'm lighting this candle. It's a bit of a concern for fellow member, friend, Carol Allen, who is going to have knee surgery tomorrow. So I'm hoping that it goes well and it's successful and that she has a healthy healing process. You want me to come to you?
Can you light it for me, please? This is a joy and concern for a physical therapist that I love who seems to have deaf ears when I'm telling her she's doing too much.
Hi, I'm Ruth Kahn, and a year ago, my father was just turning 95. He was in hospice, and he died a year ago on February 7th. So, love you still, Dad.
I'm Jessica Mink, and I have a joy. It just sort of happened, a bunch of things coincided this week. And I'm transgender, and often I'm the only trans person in the room, and like in most of my life. And I sort of like to be that, but this week I ended up at a bunch of different kinds of meetings with a bunch of other LGBT people, just LGBT people, and it was a very different kind of experience. And it sort of was refreshing. So I'm ready to be an activist in the rest of the world again.
A candle from Marcia Feldman joining us online. She writes, a candle for my friend Ruthie having knee surgery tomorrow. And from Sunil Saran, a candle for the family of Fanny Ching. And for all of these joys and these sorrows that we have lit today, and for all those that remain unspoken in the sanctuary of our hearts, I'll light one final candle. And we enter into a space of meditation and prayer, holding all of these. Holy One, who moves in and through and among us, as we live the days of our lives, the struggles and the joys, the illnesses and the recoveries, the surgeries and the celebrations, the deaths and the births, the heartbreak and the hope. As we carry all of these, be present with us. Holy One, as we move through our lives, may we know our whole selves as holy, our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and may we know one another as holy, their bodies, their minds, their spirits. May we be reminded day in and day out that we are nothing less than beautiful, nothing less than whole, and that our loving is a miracle. Let us rest together into several moments of shared silence. Amen.
wish I could see. I'll have to watch it later. This reading is an excerpt from Why We Proclaim Abortion is a Blessing, Context, History, and Theology by Reverend Ashley Horan. There are so many reasons abortion can be a blessing in someone's life. Abortion is a blessing to the person already parenting 3 children and worrying about how they will buy their groceries if they have one more mouth to feed. Abortion is a blessing to the person who receives the gut-wrenching news that if they carry their much-wanted pregnancy to term, their child would be born with a medical condition that is incompatible with life, and they would have to experience their child dying in their arms minutes after birth. Abortion is a blessing for the high schooler who desperately wants to be a parent someday, but knows they will be able to give their children a much more stable life and a much more mature parent if they wait until they are older. Abortion is a blessing to the person who has just been diagnosed with cancer and would have to put off life-saving treatment to carry a pregnancy. Abortion is a blessing to the person who is clear they are done having children and their energy is devoted to their career or their art or their adolescent kids or taking care of their own aging parents. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that every person is endowed with inherent worth and dignity, which means that our bodies and our spirits are sacred. We are created for thriving, for pleasure, for freedom. And we believe that all of us are endowed with the twin gifts of agency and conscience, which means that we are born with both free will and the ability to discern individually and in community how to use that freedom. In the context of this theological anthropology, we absolutely believe that abortion is a blessing because it is one of the many, many, many pathways toward honoring the sacredness of our bodies and helping us create lives of freedom and thriving.
I'd like to invite up Ruth Kahn to share a testimonial with us this morning.
Thank you, Heather. In 1972, I was 19 years old, sexually active, and a very young adult who never imagined that an unplanned pregnancy could happen to me. When a gynecologist confirmed that my dizziness and stomach discomfort were the symptoms of pregnancy, I burst into tears of shock. I knew immediately that I was not ready to become a parent. I was barely old enough to take care of myself, let alone a helpless baby. I felt scared and ashamed. I was supposed to know better. Fortunately, my parents supported whatever choice I would make, which turned out to be rather complicated. In 1972, abortion was illegal in Massachusetts. The gynecologist referred me to a local reproductive rights clinic. My mother accompanied me to a compassionate social worker who arranged for us to fly to New York City, where abortions were legal. We would be met at the airport and driven to an abortion clinic. I don't remember much about the flight to Manhattan, except that a volunteer bearing a sign with my name and state met us at the gate. That was also possible in those days. On our way to the clinic, Mom pointed out the familiar city sights she grew up with as a kid from Brooklyn. The clinic was cheerful with welcoming intake workers, brightly colored walls, and a waiting room filled with women. Soon, I was led inside for the procedure, which went smoothly. After a short rest, my mother and I were taken back to the airport and home. How privileged I am to have been born to a mother who would love me and accompany me on this unexpected journey. Although I experienced her as a very judgmental person, this time, Mom came through for me when I needed her most. How fortunate that I was able to find a safe legal procedure and to have parents who could help me out financially. When freedom of choice became legal in Massachusetts in 1973, and later across the country, I was so relieved that women would no longer face the same complicated journey, or so much worse. And yet, here we are. The Supreme Court and politicians are denying women the choice we so desperately know is ours alone to make. Women are dying. How can we allow this to happen? This is the first time I have ever publicly told my abortion story. Thank you, Theodore Parker Church, for providing me with a safe, loving, spiritual home. I am way past feeling ashamed, and I am very proud of my mother and me.
Thank you, Ruth. Generosity is a spiritual practice in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with gratitude for all that we have been given, and with the faith that together we have more than enough. Links to donate will be in the chat, or you can take a meditative moment writing out a check and sending it to the church after the service. Ushers will be coming around the sanctuary to collect an offering from those in the pews who wish to donate something more tangible. As Yuhiko and Xander, I think still, yes, and Xander continue with the Petite Suite, an offering to sustain this congregation of memory and hope will be gratefully received. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yukiko and Xander. What a gift to have a special guest musician with us today. So this past Saturday, I found myself attending Catholic Mass with my grandparents and several other members of my extended family. And I want to preface this story with a caveat and a reminder that Catholics are an incredibly diverse group. And I know that people in this room have a wide range of relationships to Catholicism, both positive and painful. And I personally have a great respect for Catholicism and the role that it's played in my family's life, as well as some of the transformative theologies of liberation and love that have come out of a Catholic context. And I also hold some difficult feelings about the ways that I've seen Catholic doctrines lead people to deny the humanity of me and of people that I care about. But I went to Mass because my grandparents were holding a memorial Mass for my dad, who died 6 years ago last weekend. And it was important to me to show up for this ritual that was meaningful for them. And at the end of Mass, the church had a special announcement from their Sanctity of Life ministry, from somebody who was raising money for a thinly veiled crisis pregnancy center. Now, it's worth noting that my family members are politically progressive people with a somewhat tenuous relationship to the Catholic Church. And as many of my aunts and uncles confessed to later zoning out or finding themselves enraged as they listened to this announcement, I found myself leaning forward in my seat, listening with rapt attention, because I was thinking, ooh, I'm preaching on abortion access next week, and I want to know exactly what they're saying. Because sometimes when you get really, really mad, it's nice to have a pulpit to argue back from. Because here's the thing, the conservative rhetoric out there around abortion is scary. And I share this story because I want you to know that these ideas have traction, that they are being shared from pulpits here in Massachusetts, here in 2024, that this is not some faraway fight happening in other states or in times of the past. So here were some of the notable fear-based rhetoric messages that we heard. In his talk, the speaker at one point said, since Roe was overturned, that we, meaning the people who are attempting to restrict abortion access, we are more under threat than ever. And he also said, life actually begins before conception. It begins when God first imagines you. And that Massachusetts has chosen to do a radical thing and use our tax money to fund millions of dollars in abortion clinics, which I think he meant Planned Parenthood. And as we know, Planned Parenthood is so much more than an abortion clinic, and as we also know, abortion care is health care. But friends, I am not here to talk statistics about what percentage of Planned Parenthood services are abortion care versus other types of health care, and I'm also not here to debate when life begins, because I actually don't think these are useful debates. I think the divide is deeper than that. I think we need to ask a foundational question, a theological question, which is, do we believe that every person has the right and the responsibility to decide what happens with their own body? And for me, the answer is an unequivocal yes, and it is an answer that is grounded in my Unitarian Universalist faith. As a 2022 Action of Immediate Witness, which is a statement passed by the General Assembly at the annual meeting of our Unitarian Universalist Association congregations, this statement said in 2022, our UU faith affirms that all of our bodies are sacred, and that we are each endowed with the twin gifts of agency and conscience. Each of us should have the power to decide what does and doesn't happen to our bodies at every moment of our lives, because consent and self-determination are holy. We are each endowed with the twin gifts of agency and conscience. Each of us should have the power to decide what does and doesn't happen to our bodies. And consent and self-determination are holy. At its core, I think that these debates, these politics, are fundamentally about the question, do people get to control their own bodies and their own destinies? And do we trust people to know what is right for them? And do we believe that humans are endowed with these twin gifts of agency and conscience? Friends, we are in a culture that was fundamentally and historically built on the premise of some groups having control over other people's bodies. specifically men's control over women's bodies and white people's control over the bodies of enslaved Africans. And that idea of control over other people's bodies is incredibly dangerous. In undergrad, I majored in women and gender studies, and we used to joke that a lot of our classes should actually have been titled How to Oppress People 101. Because if my women and gender studies undergrad degree taught me nothing else, it drove home the idea that it is very easy to oppress people if you can exercise control over their bodies. Where they go, their reproductive choices, how they express themselves, where they live, who they love. And we are seeing this dangerous ideology of control showing up in the chipping away at access to reproductive rights, but we are also seeing the same ideology show up in the threats to gender-affirming healthcare, in drag performances, the bans on drag performances, and in the chipping away at trans rights across the country, as people are trying to legislate these ideologies of control into law. And friends, this is not just a political debate. I want to disabuse us of the notion that we can separate politics from real people's lives. This is personal, and it is about our humanity, our sacred right, all of us, not just those of us who can bear children, not just transgender and non-binary people, but all of our access to autonomy and self-determination. And our bodies are where the personal becomes political. And we know in our society that some bodies are more politicized than others, right? People who live in queer bodies, in disabled bodies, in trans bodies, fat bodies, black and brown bodies, women's bodies, the list goes on. Our bodies are treated very differently in society, depending on what identities we have. But our bodies are the places where the personal becomes political. It is not an accident that the term reproductive justice, as opposed to reproductive rights or abortion rights, comes out of an organization called Sister Song, the Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. And they coined the term in 1994. They define reproductive justice as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, to have children, to not have children, and to parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. Reproductive justice as a holistic and intersectional approach to bodily autonomy and decision-making about whether and how to raise children, and also a recognition that after those children are born, families and caregivers need support and need safe and sustainable ways to raise those children. And it was women of color who led us in recognizing that these fights are interconnected and intersectional. Friends, in contrast to a culture that seeks to control and restrict and police other people's bodies, my Unitarian Universalist faith instead offers me a theology of embodiment that holds a profound respect for each person's sacred knowing about who they are and what is right for their bodies. And I believe that bodily autonomy is our birthright, that it is a sacred gift that we are called to protect and to honor in all of its complexity. And friends, this is political, and it is also not. It is about real people's lives and our own right to self-determination and autonomy, regardless of whether abortion access is something we are likely to ever need or to want. In a few moments, Kathy will share with us her own story about her passion around this issue and some of the landscape of faithful pro-choice activism that is happening to protect abortion access and care and choice and autonomy. And before Kathy speaks, I invite us to sing our meditation hymn again through once more, How Could Anyone?
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? how deeply you connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
My name is Kathy Ware. My pronouns are she, her, and I just want to start by saying how grateful I am to get my moment in the pulpit about something that's so important to me. So I have been thinking about doing this service for so long that it was hard to sit down and distill what I wanted to say. There's some political and legal facts that I want to share, but more than that, I want to talk about why I am so passionate about this issue and how it ties into my spirituality. I have known since middle school that my body is my own. I had no experience at that point that led me to that conclusion. It was just a gut feeling. My earliest memory of discussing abortion was in my 7th grade science class, when I was the only one not to raise my hand when my teacher asked who believed that life began at conception. It was in college that I became active in the pro-choice movement. I started going to protests and marches, and in the picture I think Deanna's going to show, that's me. I was about to board a bus to Washington, D.C. In the early 2000s, I worked as a counselor in an abortion clinic. It was there that I saw how pregnancy was unique for each individual. For some people, it was a tragedy and something that needed to be remedied. And for others, it was a baby with a name and a nursery. It was definitely heartbreaking for people who came in with non-viable pregnancies who were terminating in the later weeks. In Massachusetts, the legal limit is 24 weeks. But I have also felt deeply for the women who had internalized that their choice was a selfish one, an immoral one, if they didn't have a good enough reason. In the last 2 years since Roe fell, I have been making a connection, a personal connection, between being a UU and being pro-choice. And I believe that as religious liberals, we need to reclaim what is moral. What is right and what is wrong has long been determined by those in power and often serves patriarchal interests. What is moral has often been determined by the religious right. At a rally on June 24th, 2022, the day of the Dobbs decision, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who was the president of the UUA at the time, said at a rally, "I am furious. I am filled with holy fury at the way that our lives and our rights are being taken away." That phrase, holy fury, struck a chord in me. And I have come to realize that I am pro-choice not despite my faith. I am pro-choice because of it. And while the phrase abortion is a blessing is provocative, I have come to embrace it. Having bodily autonomy is sacred. I knew it when I was 13, and I know it now. I'm going to pause a moment and tell you a tiny bit about what is happening right now, politically and legally. Things change quickly, but this is just some of the latest news. A judge has ruled in Texas, one of the 18 states that have extreme restrictions, that doctors do not have to perform emergency abortions. That means if a person comes into the ER dying and an abortion would save their lives, a doctor can choose to let them die. It's even worse in Idaho. This month, the Supreme Court ruled that any doctor who performs an emergency abortion for any reason will be prosecuted for saving someone's life. In states where there is an exception made to save the life of the pregnant person, there is no clarification that miscarriage care won't be criminalized. So people are not receiving care to manage pregnancy loss unless and until it becomes a medical emergency. And then there are people like Brittany Watts from Ohio, who was charged with a felony for miscarrying at home. This spring, the Supreme Court is taking on the issue of whether or not one of the pills used to induce abortion, mifepristone, is safe. The court is going to decide if an FDA-approved medication is safe. I'm just going to leave that one there. And most concerning, if the next president wants to ban abortion with no exceptions, they need only to invoke the Comstock Act of 1873, an anti-vice law that outlaws access to reproductive care by making it a federal crime to mail anything that could be used to help terminate a pregnancy. Enforcing this law would negate any current state laws, even here in Massachusetts. I know this sounds far-fetched, but it is a real concern. Pregnant people are suffering and dying right here and right now in 2024. And I am full of holy fury, my friends. So how have people of faith been responding to this frightening news? Since the 1960s, pro-choice faith leaders have been actively helping people obtain abortions. Before Roe, which was passed 51 years ago last week, an organization called the Clergy Consultation Service openly advertised their abortion referral services, citing higher laws and moral obligations transcending legal codes. These faith leaders would actively find places for people to have abortions, legal and illegal, and help them get there. There are a number of organizations doing this work today. There is the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, which provides educational and practical resources for anyone who contacts them. They also go out into the community and bless clinics, standing right next to the protesters who are damning those clinics. There is Faith Aloud, which offers a hotline staffed by trained clergy and religious counselors who provide a listening ear to folks who have spiritual concerns about a pregnancy decision. There is Faith Choice Ohio, which does both education and counseling and sells some great merch, including this shirt and these stickers I'll have during coffee hour that say faithfully pro-choice. All three of these organizations, along with many secular ones, help people access abortion by finding funds and transportation, as well as offering education on how to obtain and use abortion pills. And I'll just say that as of now, providing information is not illegal. So if anyone wants to know how women or people who are pregnant in any state can access abortion pills, just reach out to me. Other organizations work directly with congregations. There is the Spiritual Alliance of Communities for Reproductive Dignity, also known as SACRED, which has a reproductive justice curriculum that churches can use to be designated as a sacred congregation, much like the process of becoming a welcoming congregation. I may be encouraging us to look into this in the future. And of course, UUs are in this work and have Uplift Action, which is part of the Side with Love campaign, which offers a training called Organizing Your Congregation for Reproductive Justice. The reading today was by the Side with Love Organizing Strategy Director, Reverend Ashley Horan. There are also religious freedom lawsuits happening, Florida, Missouri, Kentucky, and Indiana, to name a few. And the plaintiffs, both lay people and religious leaders, UUs among them, are suing on the grounds that abortion bans violate their religious liberty. I invite you all to the parlor after church, where I can share more about this advocacy and where folks, if they feel moved to, can share their own experiences of reproductive health care or lack of it. I'll end with more from Reverend Frederick Gray. We are in this struggle in solidarity. There are more of us than there are of them, and if we come together, we will win. There is a Holy Spirit in us, a spirit of courage and power that knows that liberation is only possible when we are free, when every single one of us is free.
May it be so, and amen. I invite us to rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 1014 in your teal hymnal, Answering the Call of Love. There are slightly different lyrics that we'll be singing, so if you want the updated lyrics, they'll be up here on the screen.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim, we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim, we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim, we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
Please be seated. Friends, may we fight to protect what is sacred, our rights, our autonomy, our lives. And may we remember that we are beloved and holy and beautiful for all of the ways that we embody our sacred and innate gifts of agency and conscience. May it be so, and amen. We will close with a few announcements and invitations. First of all, I'd like to invite you, if you're here with us in person, to join us for coffee hour next door, right through this door and through our breezeway. And if you are on Zoom, I invite you to stick around for a breakout room this afternoon. Another reminder, we still have pronoun stickers. If you have not yet put a pronoun sticker on your name tag and you would like to, there are stickers right by the name tag holder in the parish hall. I invite you to do that today or sometime soon. As Kathy mentioned, there will be a parlor chat after worship in the parlor to connect about more ways that you can get involved in advocacy or share whatever's on your heart after this service. And a final announcement that we are doing a Mystery Friends program between February 11th and 6 weeks later in March. And the information was in the weekly news and also over TPC Talks. The deadline to sign up is next week, next Sunday. Rose is going to share more about it next Sunday. But basically, you get paired with a mystery friend in the congregation. It's a multi-generational program specifically designed for adults to get to know kids that they may not have met before. We anticipate that we may have more adults than kids signed up, so we may also pair adults with adults who you may not have met before. But it's a lovely way to get to connect with somebody new in the congregation. We'll have a big reveal party at the end in March, and I think it's going to be really fun and sweet. So if you're interested in having a mystery pen pal for 6 weeks, please sign up with Rose. I encourage you to do so. And we will close with the final piece of our suite from Xander and Yukiko. Thank you so much.
Hello, friends. You can unmute yourself. Hello. quiz. Whoops.